Welcome to Citizen Assembly Thunderdome, where we test ideas and hone debate skills in a real-life social political arena with the goal of holistic balance. If you'd like to participate, find out how in our podcast description. Let's start with a round of introductions from our panelists. We've got about 30 seconds apiece to tell our listeners and introduce ourselves to the group. So I will go ahead and kick it off. My name is Megan, and I am currently based in Texas. And I have two primary focuses of interest. Actually, I'm going to add another. No, I'll stick with the two. So I would say education and nutrition. Now I'll pass it over to, could you please introduce yourself?
Did you say me?
I did.
Yay! My name is Cynthia Leonard. I live in the Chicagoland area. I'm grateful to be here, and I have one love. So I am also a promoter organizer for Egora-ilp.org. That's Agora-ilp.org. And I am also working on several projects outside of Egora. One of them is Hypathia's Kitchen with Radio Hydrogen. Another one is Univocity, also with Radio Hydrogen. I'm also doing podcasts with the Credible Mohawk station. I do Bud Talk and Red Talk White Lies. So please be encouraged to check those things out too. I'm busy. I'm very busy.
We're so happy to have you here, Cynthia. Thanks for coming. Staci, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Staci Gustafson. I split my time between Northern Michigan and Southwest Texas, and my major focus is holistic community problem solving. And man, I can't wait for this discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm really excited too. It's a great discussion that Ramses is bringing up. Super interesting. So now, we'll save Ramses for last when she starts her presentation, but let's go to Marcin. Is this your first time here? And let me know if I'm not pronouncing your name right, please.
I'm not 100% sure if this is my first time or not, but I'm not sure if this is like a specialized meeting. I've been to a few of these before. No, the pronunciation was great. My name's Marcin. I live in Chicago, Illinois. I'm a software engineer. I work on the Salesforce platform during my day job, and for a hobby, I work with artificial intelligence and predicting the stock market. My main focus is in inequality within our current system. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And yes, Thunderdome is a little bit different. We run it very similar to how we do other meetings, so you'll fit right in. So we'll go over to Joe. Is that you on the iPhone? Yes. You're on mute. If you want us to say we can't hear you, I think you're driving, so we can skip over you for now.
You gotta unmute yourself, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, you're still muted.
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm Joe. I'm gonna be here probably just another few seconds, and then I have to head out. I'm still kind of signed on from the last meeting.
Okay, got it. Cool. Well,
Okay.
Thank you for joining us for this time, Joe. Alex, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Krotz. I'm currently located in the Chicago area. My main interests are science and technology, and I look forward to hearing tonight's discussion.
Awesome. Thanks for being here tonight, Alex. And Dan, welcome to the group. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Dan Bader. I live in Chicago. I retired from the Chicago Department of Public Health at the end of 2016. I'm interested in mental health issues. I'm interested in abrupt climate change. And I also have an interest in biowarfare, COVID-19. And when I was working for the Chicago Department of Public Health, I was part of the bioterror team that we had. And those are my areas of interest.
Awesome. Super interesting. Thank you for joining us. Cezary, it is your turn to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Cezary from neighborhoods of Chicago. My main interest as a thinker, economics, ethics, main concern as an activist, animal liberation, and social and economic justice. And this should be fun. I'm excited about today's topic. Thanks,
Cool.
Megan.
You're welcome. Ramses. Now, Ramses is going to be presenting the idea tonight, but Ramses, could you please introduce yourself to the group?
Yep, sure. Thank you, Megan. My name is Ramses. I'm joining from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I'm background in computer science. I'm interested in human rights, especially in the third world countries, and how or what we can do in the West in order to help the helpless people. And I'm also interested in logic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ramses. So we're going to move on to today's presentation now. And like I mentioned, Ramses will be presenting her idea, Are Homosexual People Smarter Than Heterosexual People?, which has been written up to share with others in Egora, which is the worldwide stock market of ideas, which you can find at egora-ilp.org. Egora is an online platform where people from all around the world can turn their ideas into policy to build a better world. So Ramses is going to start screen sharing, and she will proceed with the reading of her idea.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you so much, guys, for inviting me to present today at the Thunderdome. Just before I share my screen, I just want to make sure that you guys can see my name on Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah, can you see it very well? Like read the whole thing? Okay, it's perfect.
And IQ 138.
Okay, it's fantastic. Now, just wanted to remind you, right? Like just making sure. So let me share.
I'm not sure everybody heard that. That was a little bit quiet. Ramses's IQ is 138 people.
Thank you, Staci.
Quick question. What's IQ?
I don't know. You just do an IQ test and they give you that number and that's it.
Okay. I have numbers too.
I know, like you can do whatever, like there's one test, for example, that I got over 150, but of course I'm not counting this. But anyways, let's share. Yeah, so you can see the idea, guys. Perfect. Are homosexual people smarter than the heterosexual in average? So here is my point of view, and I really suggest that we discuss this together tonight. So there are some indicators, okay? However, these indicators do not imply or do not necessarily imply that homosexuals are smarter. First of all, one indicator here is that gay couples usually have higher household incomes. So if a man married to a man, usually both of them are working, and mostly they have high education. So the sum of their households really count. So because they are smarter? No, I don't think so. I think it is because they don't have kids. So they can make use of their free time to gain money instead of raising kids. So according to the statistics, 46, and the references are in the idea. So 46% of people in same-sex couples have college degrees compared to under 1/3 of people in heterosexual couples. And that makes sense, and we are going to talk about that later. Gay men in college, moreover, have higher than average GPAs and are significantly more likely to participate in extracurricular activities. Also, this is another statistic. However, again, this doesn't necessarily imply that they are smarter, because they can simply be more hard workers just for reasons, which I'm gonna explain below. So here, for this specific part, I'm saying there are many possible reasons for that. Maybe they are more intelligent, yes, but there are other possibilities, which we're going to talk about later. Now, environmental factors, and of course, experiences that you face when you are born, and you discover that you are gay. Gays born into homophobic areas understand early on that they must escape in order to find acceptance. That was exactly my way of thinking back when I was in Egypt. The idea of escape and the idea that I have some work to do in order to put myself in a secure place. Starting in childhood, most gay people are acutely aware of the challenges that they will face, the roadblocks that they will counter. And that was the case for me as well. That's why I had to prove myself. When excelling in school and making money are the only escape hatch to happiness, hitting the books and working overtime are appealing or are more appealing to gay people. And that's basically me. Because now, for example, now I moved to Canada, but I'm living alone, so I have to work hard, I cannot just stay without a job. I have to do something. So, and because computer science is my specialization, and I'm working as software engineer, some people just perceive as if I'm intelligent, just like other software engineers here in the meeting. However, this, in my opinion, this implication is not necessary. Okay, it's because here in the notes, like the first note here says, don't forget that there are a lot of gay people out there that are stupid as a piece of shit. And yeah, like I really have seen that by myself. And here is my suggestion: join an LGBT community, okay? And you're gonna get a better idea about the average gay, like how the average gay is like, okay? Your straight, friendly gay friends, like me, for example, are not representative for the whole community. In the LGBT community, you are gonna find people who are not employed, who have disabilities, who have mental disabilities, and so on.
Okay. Wow, Ramses, thank you. Very, very well presented. And I always love the humor that you bring into it. So thank you. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take just a vote, a show of hands of who is in general support of this idea. Okay, we have Cezary.
Wait, that's actually because you are anti-gay. This is not really supporting the thing from your heart.
I guess we'll talk about that within the discussions, but this idea is in Egora. Ramses put it in the chat. Is anybody currently supporting this on their ideological profile? Nope. Okay. Well, maybe that will change tonight, or maybe it won't. But we're going to move into discussion now. So Cezary has his hand up. He's going to go first. But before that, I just want to let everybody know that if you would like to talk, the best thing to do is to type hand up in the chat. That way we can keep it all in order. And that's how we will get to you. But Cezary, go ahead. Take it away.
Oh, I was just a little bit slow because I'm straight and not so smart. So it took me a long time to figure out what the question was.
Woohoo!
No, but I think, yeah, I was just trying to say that I think I'm gonna support the idea because I need a little bit more time to understand what it's saying. But I think I will support this idea as a part of my truths we should all know community ideas. So, but okay, but that's what I wanted to say about that. And then I'm just thinking, first of all, so wait, actually, so please, can you explain this idea to me? So what is this idea saying? It's because it seems like to be just a provocative title, but it's saying that there are all these reasons that it's not true. So is that what it's saying?
Exactly. That's always my strategy. Like bring people and then say whatever. Yeah, in my opinion, there are a lot of implications that are usually made based on single experience. Like you have seen a gay person and they are so smart, oh my goodness, then your mind, just automatically makes the connection between being gay and being smart. Although if you meet a straight person who is smart, you never make that connection, You are like, okay, maybe because they are just nerds, they are socially awkward. So all socially awkward people are smart and so on. And the problem here is like many gay people are closed, they are not very openly gay to the point, like for instance, I can stay with a person, we can be friends for a while, and then some days they tell me I'm gay. By the way, I belong to the LGBT community or whatever. And by the way, that's in the case of me, like I'm a transgender and openly gay, etc. But for you as a straight, usually you will have a lot of gay friends that you do not know about their sexual orientation, okay? Because we don't prefer, to welcome people by saying, hello, my name is Ramses and I am gay. It doesn't work that way. So I truly, like, it is a very small sample to use in order to judge. And at the same time, as I mentioned, it is just illusion.
Okay, thank you, Ramses. So before we go over to Dan, I want to just welcome other Dan into the group, Daniel. So we have two Dans today. Daniel, so the idea that we're talking about, Ramses brought up, she put it in the chat so you can read it, but it's a question really, and it is that are homosexuals smarter than heterosexuals? So I recommend, it's actually a pretty short idea, so we'll put it there again, so that way you can take a look at it and then jump into the conversation. But other Dan, you are up.
Yeah, so Ramses, I would have given you, a half type thing, as I usually do to your suggestions, or your the material you're introducing. So, I was taught when it comes to intelligence, usually some version of it means that you're capable of solving problems. You have the ability to persevere when you get a problem. And maybe you can do it quicker than other individuals, that you have a good capacity for abstract thinking, this kind of thing. But some people clearly are gifted in certain ways. Some people have that, the luck of the draw. They're very good with quantitative material. Math comes naturally to them, sometimes correlated with musical ability. People come into the world with a different set of physical and cognitive capacities. And the IQ test, a lot of people really believe that an IQ test does represent a person's underlying cognitive strength, and on the other hand, a lot of people would argue that, for one thing, you have to have the adequate knowledge or education in order to think productively about anything. And I would also say too, I don't know what the percentage is of the gay population relative to, I guess, the straight population or heterosexual population. But I do think that, dividing it like that is kind of hard to do. And the last thing I would say is, if you're in a community, if you come into the world and you're a person who maybe as you come up in the world, you're feeling, I don't really fit in, I know that a lot of people don't like me because of my identity and so on. This, I think, is a great stimulant to learning about the world and learning about people. And I think that's a big motivational force. So just wanted to throw those things in there.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. So I believe, I need to scroll up on the chat a little bit. So I believe next up is Cezary, and then afterwards will be Alex. So Cezary, go ahead.
So this one thought I had was that, we might have this perception of gay people being smarter or more intelligent, but maybe this has to do with the fact that there are a lot of really dumb gay people who are too dumb to understand that they're gay. And so they just go with the conventions, They're like, oh, I'm supposed to feel this way as a straight person. And they don't, they don't question themselves enough, or they don't have enough self-confidence or something in their own ability to understand themselves. I don't know. How true do you all think that is? I yield.
Thank you, Cezary. Good way to end with a rhetorical question. So now we'll go ahead and go over to Alex, who is next.
Yeah, I think the question is a really troubling question to even consider seriously, because identically phrased questions have been used in the past and seriously considered for the sole purpose of subjugating other populations. Lots of research into the racial disparities in intelligence was done pretty much for the sole purpose of confirming racial biases. I don't think there's a lot of value in the statistics cited. I think the articles asking, are gay people smarter than straight people, or do they just work harder? Right, this is first of all, the article, looking at how much somebody makes can't really be correlated to how smart they are, at least if you're considering intelligence on an IQ test, right? And I don't think it's been well established that intelligence on an IQ test correlates to success in the marketplace. Right, and I find myself it's very difficult to really consider it, because I don't think you could even address this question in a really fair way without first defining intelligence in a rigorous manner, which I don't think has been done, and then finding statistics, but it's got a bad history, at least when it's applied to looking at different population groups.
Great point, Alex. Really great way to talk about what is intelligence and how should we define that. Ramses, you are up.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. Of course, the population is not divided into gay and straight, for sure. I have never met a man who told me, hey, I'm straight, sorry, I can't sleep with you. This never happened. Most people will accept to go and try the thing. And that being said, this confirms Kinsey. What Kinsey's work is that most people are actually bisexual, or in a broader term, pansexual. Most people are attracted to, or most men, for example, are attracted to being feminine. They're attracted to the feminine. However, if your gender is just male or man, but you are ready to have the feminine role in the sexual play or in the intercourse, in that case, most people actually on the other side will be willing to join that, which means that most people are not straight. Most people are actually pansexual or whatever. And the straights or the gays are just on the sides of the spectrum. But my point are very, what they call it, outer point, I guess. So they are very special case. For Cezary's question, guess what, Cezary? Yeah, that was one of the questions in the article. Article number 1. It was whether yeah, exactly. So is that for the gender, Staci? Yeah, I agree, of course, with you that there is a spectrum for the gender, but there is a spectrum for sexual orientation as well. What you are attracted to, what you can. I don't want to use bad words because I have been asked explicitly to stay. Yeah, but I would say what you can feel attracted to, and this is very clear in the females, for example. So most women are actually bisexual and are ready to go for sexual intercourse with another woman, but women are expressive while men are not expressive. So men would have the desire, but they will never express it. You have to consider this, and this is one of the factors that we always consider in the research. Next, yeah, so the fact that you have come out to yourself, Cezary, yeah, I really believe that these one factors, it really implies, and this implication is correct, this implies that you have an acceptable degree of critical thinking, of questioning the world and questioning yourself, your reality. So that being said, coming out is really something that, in my opinion, might reflect higher intellectual abilities. And as Dan mentioned, intelligence doesn't necessarily be, is not necessarily inherited. There is a component that is inherited, which we call it the G factor. And there is a component that can be obtained by experiences like education, for example, like learning logic, learning critical thinking, avoiding Islam, and so on. All these stuff increases your intelligence. Now, finally, for Alex, for Alex.
Wait, did y'all not get that? Avoiding Islam. Please continue, Ramses. That was brilliant.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
missed it.
So I was saying that if you are educated, then most probably this education will contribute to your intelligence. If you learn something about logic or about critical thinking and you start using it, then most probably you will be more intelligent. Most people here read, right? Staci, Megan, Dan, Alex, Dan, the other Dan, and Cezary. Most of us read books, and most of us are really having this kind of general knowledge. This contributes to your intelligence as well. So intelligence is not something that you are born with. No, it consists of the two factors. The G factor, these your genes or the inheritable part, and of course, the ones that you obtain as the factors that you obtain while you learn during your learning process. So I was saying, if you leave Islam, for example, this will help you have critical thinking. So this will increase your intelligence as well. There is research, by the way, to support this. Now, finally, the last thing. So for Alex, so here is a point, Alex. When some research starts to measure intelligence, then they have to put a definition for intelligence or like an assumption to begin with, a premise, basically. So I would use the word intelligence in order to refer to X, Y, Z. Say, for example, cognitive abilities. Say, for example, as Dan mentioned, the ability to solve problems, etc. This is one point. And second point here, IQ is really established in research as a measure, an accurate measure to understand the relative differences of intelligence between different groups of people. Okay, so it really helps you if you have two populations that you are studying. It really helps you measure the difference in intelligence. And the racial, the papers that try to measure the IQ difference between two races, for example, in my opinion, are well-founded, and not most of them are for confirming racial biases. It is just research and it is just science. And I have forwarded some of these papers to Cezary because I wanted to discuss them in Citizen Assembly. And some of them are really published by researchers who are really, in my opinion, they are really trusted. Like the words, the papers and the writings of the papers are really like it can be discussed. It is not biased, and that's it for me. So, sorry, guys.
No problem. Thank you so much for touching on all the different questions asked, Ramses. So I am up next, and then after myself will be Dan. So I just wanted to piggyback off what Alex proposed and ask what really is intelligence. And I do agree a lot with how Ramses defined it with self-awareness. But one question I want to ask is just raise your hand. If somebody graduates from Harvard with a PhD, who here would generally consider them to be intelligent? Right, most of us. See, that person might be very highly schooled, but that doesn't mean they're educated. They just learn to memorize facts and numbers. In school, I remember learning the multiplication tables, and you were seen as smart if you could recite all of them. That's not intelligence. That's just the ability to be able to regurgitate information. That doctor that's going to go on with the PhD likely has no education in nutrition or actually anything that has to do with health. He's just trained how to sell people pharmaceuticals, and he knows that very well, but he may not be intelligent. So the way I define intelligence, and I would just like to see if you guys agree, is self-awareness. So if you how aware of yourself are you? I thought it was interesting what Ramses mentioned, that gay people who are openly gay people, so to say, who have come to the realization, accepted who they are and aren't afraid of it, maybe they do show a sign of higher intelligence and that they're self-aware, but that could be debatable because that's not solid. But once again, self-awareness is really what it is. I mean, most of the things, if you really look at it in the world, don't actually exist. It's just people wearing costumes, and that's not intelligence. It's just a facade, really. So true intelligence would be if you are left in the middle of nowhere or you're dropped in an area that you've never been to before, could you survive? That's kind of the way I look at it. Okay, so I will yield the floor to Dan, who is next.
Okay, so let me bring another frequent comparison into this. The people who do the IQ research for many, many years, they tend to evaluate different races in terms of IQ. So for example, they'll use, and everything is, the normal distribution, and they'll take, let's say, white people, Caucasian people, and they'll have an IQ, let's say, of 100. Then one standard, 15 points below that at 85 will be the African Black IQ average. So white, 100, Black, 85, Asian, usually meaning East Asian, China, Japan, Korea, etc. That will be maybe a little bit higher. And then, of course, all the ethnic group, everybody can be tested. But I want to make a point that I think is really needs to be considered. So the G that Ramses is talking about, kind of like, I think they get that through a statistical process of factor analysis, where you have a lot of things that are very highly correlated, and they use G, and that is considered to be genetic. So if you have, let's say you have two people, they have a child, and both people have, let's say 130 IQs. The probability is that child will have an IQ genetically that's going to be close to what the parents have. That's kind of a general principle in IQ research. Now, when you look at it in terms of racial differences or any other kind of differences, it's important to remember, and I'm talking particularly the black-white situation, which is a big deal in our country, is this, that the experience of sub-Saharan Africans and then eventually brought over to the New World, usually in slavery, those particular environments did not exercise very much in the way of selectivity, particularly for IQ. In other words, if you were in sub-Saharan Africa or you're over here working as a slave in the New World, you're not going to be concerned with mathematics, physics, literacy, etc. So there isn't going to be a kind of matching up like we see today. But if you look at, let's say, two Blacks that have high IQs, maybe one person is a teacher, another one is a lawyer, they have children. Those children are going to have, in terms of G or their genetic capacity, is going to be similar to what the parents have. And so when we look at differences, the racial differences in particular, you do have to, and black-white here, you have to look at the fact that the selection forces that the Black population in sub-Saharan Africa, the way of life there didn't require, it wasn't part of the Industrial Revolution, which kicked off in Europe in 1750. So the selection pressures have been different. But you can see in the United States, it's very obvious that, I don't know what the average IQ is these days or anything, but it's very clear that in the Black population, people are becoming IQ smarter and smarter as the generations proceed, and the selection pressures are different. And I think it's a really important thing to consider. And from a racist point of view, the racist people love, and in academia, by the way, in academia, professors, they a lot of, they basically like to point to these IQ differences, the average IQ difference, and to assert a certain kind of superiority. And they do not normally consider the selection pressures that different groups of people have been under. And I would say, bringing it into the gay population, again, there's a certain kind of selection pressure that is not exactly what I would, it's not the same, but going back to my earlier point, there is a pressure to understand human nature, to understand people, to understand the world when you're in a situation where your very well-being may depend on your understanding, and also being able to understand who you are. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Dan. So Cezary, you are next.
Oh, I think Alex is next.
Okay, I missed that. Is that right, Alex?
Unless let me just double check.
You're right. I'm sorry, Alex. You are next, and then Cezary.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So yeah, I thought what Dan, you said was very interesting. I think it's also worth pointing out, Ramses, that you don't put the test that you scored 138 on in your name, right? You didn't specify whether it was an English language test, whether it was a language independent IQ test. All of these different test methodologies also contribute to how someone might perform on the exam. I think in the past, IQ tests were based on if you could speak English or not. Now, some of them are pattern-based, but those don't go into the end number, really, or at least not in how everyday people use them. And so I think also implying that because it's a research topic, it must be independent of, or it must be free of flaws is also wrong. The fact is that if you're coming to the conclusion of, okay, someone's more intelligent without acknowledging what the specific testing circumstances were, I think you're inherently misconstruing the results of the research when you do that. Again, like what Dan said, how people in academia also can misconstrue these results in order to draw conclusions that aren't necessarily valid, right? You can look at what is the population disparity in acceptances to Harvard, let's say. There's a huge racial population disparity there. Are we to say that that is a mention of intelligence. No, we're simply to say that it's a measure of how well is a population fit to go to Harvard, right? Or to get in. And I think it's that sort of lack of nuance in the question itself of, is one population more intelligent than another, that makes it difficult to address in a compelling way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. So we do have 2 more people up. So we're gonna have to do now, just because we are running short on time. Everybody here on out is gonna get 2 minutes, and I'll be timing it. Just to let you know in advance, at 2 minutes, I will be cutting off. So go ahead, Cezary.
My point is so good that I'm just gonna sit here and waste some of my time. So I can just make my point within a minute. So just relax, it's coming. It's gonna be super sweet. I'm just joking. I want to make my point. I want all the time I can get.
You need to push,
No, so for the most part, I think these kind of conversations are pointless. Like this whole thing is ridiculous. So okay, one population is more intelligent than another, but so what? But overall, they're bell curves, because they're still, everything's still on a bell curve. They're going to be, I don't know, let's say black people are less intelligent than white people. Their IQ is lower. So what? If you're going to hire someone for a job, you're going to not hire somebody because they're black just because the bell curve is different. But even though that individual has a higher IQ than the white candidate, so even though the populations might be different, but you have somebody from that population who exceeds the person from the other population. I mean, if you don't hire that person, then you're an idiot. I mean, that's just not very smart. So this whole thing, you have to judge people as individuals, what they have to offer, regardless of which group they fit into. Because you could come up with all kinds of other metrics of oh, they have this kind of eye color, so now let's make judgments. No, just judge on the quality that each individual is bringing. So that's the one thing I wanted to make. One point. The one other thing I just wanted to say is I watched this really interesting video. It was a few years back. It was 10 years ago. It was about what intelligence actually means. And I want to try to find this video again. But they actually summarized this with this really great, quite philosophical point. Intelligence is the ability to maximize future possibilities. That's what it is. It's actually pretty wild, because those possibilities could be anything, literally anything. But as long as whatever is happening is maximizing those possibilities, because this is really mind-blowing. If you look at the tree of possibilities, from this point, if you make this decision, then from that point you make another decision. Some of those decisions run into dead ends, while other ones open up new trees of possibilities. So it's actually quite impossible to really imagine, because it all comes down to how far into the future can you really see? Because the game of chess, hold on a second, Meg. The game of chess is a really great example of this, because in chess you make sacrifices, you make moves that would look crazy or disastrous, like mistakes, but which are not. They're sacrifices that are meant to give you greater advantage in the future. So people fall for those sacrifices. So what might look like a bottleneck that reduces your possibilities, if you can see far enough into the future, it actually opens up a whole new tree of possibilities. So it actually really becomes really difficult to say what's more intelligent unless you're more intelligent, because you can see further into the future. But then you would actually have to be able to see infinitely into the future in order to really have any objective perspective on any real perspective of which tree of possibilities ends and which tree of possibilities opens up a new tree of possibilities. Anyways, if I'm wrong, please do correct me. Thank you.
Ramses, go ahead.
Okay, so to answer Cezary, so what is the point of anthropology, for example? What is the point of studying archaeology? What is the point of studying theoretical physics, for instance? Okay, if you know, for example, the details about the Homo neanderthalis, for instance, is it gonna help you find a job? So, most of the science itself is to feed our curiosity. It is not something that you do in order to get a job, for example, or whatever. We are just interested to know whether there is an intelligence difference between races or not. Some people are just interested to know. And now to answer Dan and Alex, I'm surprised, guys, that you are raising points that are very classical in, like, the responses that I'm gonna say right now in a minute are like, it's very classical, like stuff that has been discussed since 1900. Okay, so for example, you are saying the cultural factor, okay, whether the test is in English or not. So Black people in America do not speak English. Like the English abilities of Black people in America are worse than the white, for example. We have rap and we have a lot of Black rappers, and it sounds like their English is very good, right? And other than the cultural factor here, so when you have 15 points difference in IQ between the Black and white, you really need to question that. You shouldn't refute the whole thing just because you have concerns. There must be a reason why there is a flow between American Black and American white. I think I got my 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Ramses, for respecting the time, unlike some other participants in here. But so right now we have Dan, who has his hand up. And guys, can we really, unless people want to stay on afterwards, but just to respect everyone's time in general, we do run about an hour and we are moving pretty close to that point. So we have a couple more hands up. So if we could please keep it at about 2 minutes. If you pay attention to the chat, I'm going to let you know when you have 30 seconds left. So Dan, go ahead.
Okay. So again, you know, these differences, the group differences, do need to be looked at. You know, I'll throw in another environmental factor, which I think is significant. I remember, you know, when I started grammar school, and my family was living on a military depot, and where it was located. Anyway, I went to school with a bunch of kids who were servicing the installation. And they were the kids of displaced coal miners from Kentucky, Southern Illinois, this kind of thing. And I went to school with these Appalachian kids. And I remember in first grade, what happened was, you know, we got our report cards. And, you know, I think I had pretty good grades, you know. And yet when we got on the bus, you know, the other boys were talking about, you know, getting bad grades. And I immediately understood that if you were a boy, you know, in this group, getting bad grades was actually seemed to be a source of pride. And I absorbed that, I really did. And I never, all the way throughout grammar school, wherever I was never a good student. I actually took pride at a certain level being that way. And what I'm trying to point out is that, again, in a lot of communities, you know, talk about difference between gay, straight. We can look at the gender differences. You know, a lot of times boys are socialized into not being very good students and not having much of an interest in it. And so what I'm saying is there's just a lot of factors that can go into how people are, what knowledge they have, and this kind of thing. And we have to look at all of those things, because so you could take the difference between black and white, let's say that 15-point differential, and say, well, there's your proof. There's a difference. But you have to look at all these other variables that may be confounding that kind of an assumption. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jan. Wonderful points that you brought up, comparing, you know, because it's oftentimes we find the people who become the most successful are ones who actually had very little schooling. I find that interesting. But Alex is next, and after that we have Ramses, and we'll move into closing remarks after that.
Yeah, so I think the main point is that all of the things that are not measured by IQ tests seem to have been brought up as factors of intelligence. As far as the language thing, I'm in no way saying that Black people can't speak English. What I'm saying is that there are different like local dialects of English, and your ability to learn proper English that you might see on an IQ test is...
That's not accepted, Alex. Like IQ test is not a piece of literature. It's just 1 + 2 = what? Like it shows you 1, 3, 5, and you expect that the missing item is 7. There's just no need to consider dialects here.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that. I think I've seen IQ tests that do in fact have word exam or like
even if they have
things.
wordings. Even if they have wordings, it is not really that wordings that like very basic knowledge of English will help you.
Yeah,
So-
this is sort of a moot point because there are language-free IQ tests, and I think what I'm saying applies to those as well. And like one example is there's a famous person in my field who got his PhD in theoretical chemistry from Yale and then pursued his lifelong dream of becoming a corn farmer. And that's what he's doing now, right? So even the...
Yeah, I want to be a bus
success-
driver.
Yeah, so the correlation of these things outside of this strict circumstances of the exam is what I have a huge problem with. You're taking this quantity that represents the performance on exam and correlating it to things outside of the context of the exam, and that's innately flawed in its
These
methodology.
research,
What?
you apply an
No, but
experiment.
it's no. Ramses, can I finish my point?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so it's not the research that I have a problem with. The problem is the interpretation of the research, right? We could design a test that only one person in this room would pass. We could design a test that only Megan would pass. We could design a test that only you could pass. And that doesn't correlate necessarily to what we want it to correlate to. It correlates only to the test.
So
And so
why
I
white
would-
people pass but Black people don't? Like we designed a test, okay, that simply shows just some figures and you need to find relationships between them. Then why white people get higher points?
Okay.
Because there are lots of other things that go into your ability to solve these problems, Ramses.
Yeah.
Okay, so these things, the whites have acquired them, but the Black did not?
Hot
these
debate.
are-
Hot debate.
Well,
Hot debate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ahead and cut that right now. I do think that is a really interesting discussion.
We can really call a hot debate too. I support that.
Megan, if you have to go, I can finish up.
Yes, please. So I do have to hop off at
Oh.
8. I'll throw in if anyone's okay with that. I just have one closing remark and then I'm out. But I really appreciated this discussion. I thought it was very yeah, I appreciated it. I'm glad we talked about it. But overall, I kind of put it in the chat, but saying that language is a sign of intelligence and knowing multiple languages, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that because it just means that you know words and words pretty much are nothing. It's just a way to add meaning to true language, which is communication through instinct. All of us really do have an extra sense, which is intuitive. And sometimes that can actually be covered up by modern intelligence, which isn't really intelligence. And some of the most intelligent people are people of different, some are where white races, European, some were the African tribes, but the primitive peoples are the happiest people, most intelligent out there because they're in tune with nature and to reality. I think most of the world now is just disconnected from reality. That is all. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of the discussion. And thank you guys so much. And thank you, Staci, for taking over.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. So do we want to call a hot debate, guys?
Yes.
Okay, Daniel, do you have your timer ready? 2 minutes total, 30 seconds apiece.
30 seconds a piece, that's too much. Isn't it 20 seconds?
You want 20 seconds? Is that okay, Alex?
Yeah.
All righty, these are the rules. Anyone can call a hot debate, usually triggered by a hot or prolonged debate between two participants. The contenders will debate for 3 minutes. Let's call 2 minutes.
Okay.
A designee uses a timer and calls out pass every 20 seconds. The debate can be ended for anger or swearing by muting. Scoring is judged on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest value and scored in 3 areas: brevity, ability to state your case quickly; content, ability to gain agreement; and the winner, who won the debate. Who wants to be the judge? Cezary?
No way.
Who's going to be the judge?
These rules take longer than the game itself. Let's just go.
Hey, I shortened them. All right. So either I or Cezary will judge, whoever gets there first. Are we ready with the timer?
Yeah, I can start to help. Wow, running very
Go.
nice timer.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the timer to start.
Oh, are you starting it, Daniel? Go ahead.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, so Alex, you say that there is some reason why Black people score lower than the white people in IQ tests, while IQ tests are as what I described. What is your reasoning?
I don't, okay, I guess it's my time. I'm not going to pretend to be able to give you a reason. What I'm telling you is that reason is not adequately assessed by the IQ test. The IQ test's sole function is measuring a specific quantity that relates to the performance on the test. All these other reasons that could lead to that outcome are not taken into account, and they're not included in discussions on the exam.
And what do you think the quality is? When I give you a test where there are some shapes that you need to find relationships between them, like what kind of quality is that? Isn't this the ability to build relationships between concepts and things, or something else?
Sure, I'll agree that that's some sort of spatial reasoning, perhaps. I don't know specifically, but let's look at what Cezary used as an example of intelligence, the ability to have strategic thinking. That definitely doesn't measure strategic thinking. And if that's not on the exam, then it's an incomplete measure of intelligence. And I don't think there's, at least to my knowledge, an IQ test that has a complete measure of intelligence.
So you agree that the spatial thinking might be evaluated using this test, right? So in that case, why the Black people have lower abilities when it comes to a spatial thinking?
I'm gonna wait till my turn. Again, I don't know what a reason might be for a particular outcome on an exam. All I can say is that the outcome of the exam does not give insight into the reasons. And that's where it's limited. It's an incomplete measure, is what my criticism is.
I should reply to that. This is unfair.
Actually, that's fair ups, I think. Alex, you started and Alex ended. All right. I got the mic. I'm going to judge. And that was really close. I think you both had good points and you both passed it very quickly. So equal points for brevity. And I guess I kind of got to give it to Alex here because I thought that his points were very logical.
That's not true at all.
Okay,
The reasoning is really having problems. So you are refuting the whole thing because you are skeptic about specific. I ask you a question. You agree that it measures spatial thinking. Then why there is a difference? There must be a reason why Black people fail at this specific thing, right? And by the way, IQ tests do not just measure spatial thinking. You need to read. There is a lot of research, and IQ tests have many different types. Among these types is IQ tests to measure the G factor. And here's a point, Dan Bader, you are mixing the G factor with many other factors, like environmental. Like, seriously, we have all been to school, and this boy bright thing about having lower GPAs, we all have been into that experience, not you alone, Dan. Okay, and when I was young, yeah, boys used to behave like that. In my opinion, you guys are refuting the whole thing without researching it. And at the same time, you are making overgeneralizations. You need to specify which IQ tests you disagree with. And for the IQ tests that measure the G factors, it still show the same difference.
Yeah, but go ahead, Staci.
We'll let you finish up for 2 minutes and then we'll go into closing remarks.
Yeah, I think the main issue is that when we talk about intelligence, even when you've spoken about intelligence here tonight, you've regarded it in such a way that it's some predictor of future success, some correlation to spatial thinking, but also to the ability to communicate.
No, I didn't say that at all. That was Cezary. And I didn't correlate
but,
spatial thinking to
but
intelligence.
Alex, it's his time to talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Ramsey. So if you didn't say that, then okay, you didn't say that. But at least in everyday...
Yeah, that's important because implications really affect the argument. I didn't make any of that implications.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is that in everyday life, when we talk about intelligence, it's not within the context of an IQ test. And because of that, if you take the results of an IQ test and use that to correlate intelligence, you're missing out on every piece of...
Yeah, but in everyday life, and there is a research for that, for people that you perceive as intelligent, okay, like you see some nerd, for example, at school, and say, oh my goodness, that guy is very intelligent. This is called perceived intelligence. Why does it correlate with the results of IQ tests? Like, why those nerds always get higher results than others?
See, these why questions aren't answered.
Go ahead. Ramses, please let Alex finish. And then when he's done, we have to move to closing our remarks. Go ahead, Alex.
But he is making misconceptions, just for your information.
Okay, we can finish up the conversation after we end as well.
Why don't we just go to closing remarks?
Okay.
No, man, you can continue. I want to hear you. Like, we want to hear you. Like, they are misconceptions, yes, but you have the right to express them.
Oh, I was just saying if we're waiting for closing remarks and then can continue afterwards, I'm open to doing that. That's
okay. Let's do that. Let's see. Dan Tweed, would you like to give us your closing remarks, please?
Okay, unmuting. Yeah, this is kind of the old controversy caused by the book, The Bell Curve, Charles Murray wrote, that kind of threw the academic world into a big tizzy. But, you know, this, I put in the comments, the chat, a standard IQ test, basically, sorry, that's the timer. It really optimizes for a person with good file clerk skills. I mean, there are so many other dimensions to intelligence. Emotional intelligence, there's, you know, artistic intelligence, there's, you know, abstract musical, you know, problem solving. I mean, we're defined, and we don't even know what consciousness is, for that matter. I mean, we do it, but we don't have a good definition of it. And, you know, considering that they're quite interrelated, that should give us a lot of pause before we say this person's intelligent and that person is not. So I think that's about my time. How long are we doing for closing remarks? 90 seconds?
You can go another 30. That'd be fine.
Yeah, so I think intelligence is smart enough to know when it's probably not seeing the entire picture. It's like, I don't have enough information about the universe to be a pessimist or an optimist. So I just try to be a realist and use probabilities like science does. You know, we use evidence of past probabilities to predict future ones. I think that's the best we can do with most intelligence testing for now. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel. That was very balanced. I appreciate that. Dan Bader, would you like to give some closing remarks?
Yes. So the IQ controversy, it has been around for a long time, going all the way back, I think, to I don't know, the late 1890s, early 1900s. And I do accept that you can factor analyze the G, and then it becomes a hypothetical concept that this is sort of the genetic capacity that a person has in terms of intelligence. But I do think, as I mentioned earlier, I think that selection pressures are a key that can affect G if we accept G as being a legitimate construct. And that should not be forgotten, because what happens, it becomes, everything becomes reified. You know, IQ, take your test, that's who you are. And people love, people love to compare IQs, it's kind of becomes a status thing. However, there's many variables that go into a person adapting and becoming competent and successful in their endeavors. And the last thing I'll say is, the 3 building blocks of mental health, which I promote, will really help you with your emotional intelligence. And all right, thank you, folks.
Wonderful points. Thank you so much for your perspective tonight, Dan. That was wonderful. Let's see. Let's go to Alex, and then let's go. I'll do mine. Then we'll do Alex and finish up with Ramses. Great conversation. Thank you, Ramses. I so enjoy it when you attend and speak with us. I love your perspectives, and it's always a great conversation. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Alex, for your wonderful comments. And so then I'll turn it over to Alex. Go ahead. Closing remarks.
Sure, yeah, just to bring it back to the opening question, I don't think it can be seriously considered, at least from the IQ perspective, not because the tests are wrong, but for everything that the tests leave out. Some of those things Dan mentioned, or Dan Twedt mentioned. But yeah, it was an interesting discussion. Thanks.
And Ramses.
Yeah, so I just want to confirm to you guys that I am not advocating for IQ tests as a measure of intelligence. Okay, so I'm not advocating for that at all. But what I am rejecting here is your reasons for rejecting the IQ test as a quantifiable measure for intelligence. Unfortunately, your reasoning has a lot of problems, especially the contradictions, for example, like Dan Bader talking about G factor and selection at the same time. The G factor is to measure selection. This is what it is made for. Like, we are getting to populations, we are selecting them in a way that they are really different, racially different. And we want to see whether this race itself, this race thing is gonna make a difference or not. And surprisingly, it does. In all, like most of the experiments, most of the research that you can see here, it shows a difference. And there must be a reason. The reason that IQ tests themselves are, constructed in a way that works for the white, but doesn't work for the black, of course, I reject that. And of course, for example, emotional intelligence. Dude, if your emotional intelligence contributes to your intelligence and your intelligence is lower than other people, we are interested in the relationship of your intelligence, compared to other people. Emotional intelligence might contribute to that, but when we measure general intelligence, we are measuring general intelligence. When we want to measure emotional intelligence, this is another story. And don't tell me that the researchers are dumb. The researchers are not, and of course they know all these factors, and you'll find a lot of theory and a lot of papers. That's why Dan's suggestion to go and read the bell curve. Yeah, I really agree with that. It's really a nice book. I didn't read it myself, but I have seen a lot of reviews. And to be honest, the guys are very academically sound. They use very proper logic, and their replies to criticism will really amuse you. Finally, Staci, also, for example, this is an example for how you can fall into logic fallacies while you don't feel. So if for example, I hear a balanced point of view, this doesn't necessarily mean that it is correct. You got my point? So Dan's point of view is balanced, yes, but it is not correct. You get my point? Yeah, and that's so for me, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having the patience, to handle my criticism and my point of view. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ramses. All right, so let's measure the panelists' agreement with this idea now. Raise your hands if you agree with or support this idea in Egora. I can't see Alex, but I'm assuming not. So right now, just Ramses. Okay. Let me finish up here. For our viewers and listeners, if you liked this idea, don't forget to support it in egora-ilp.org. Also in Egora, you will find information for our upcoming meetings. And finally, like our page and join our group, a Citizen Assembly on Facebook. Thanks everybody so much.